Hey Titans, this is Mr. Sturts, back down in the algebra cave. Today we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations by taking square roots. Okay, remember quadratics are equations or expressions with an exponent of 2. So we're going to try to, basically what we've been doing all year, get x by itself, but now we have an exponent in there that we need to get rid of. Okay, so how we're going to undo an exponent, how we cancel out this squared here to get x by itself, we're going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, what we do to one side we have to do to the other to keep it equal. So if we square root the left side, the square root and the squared, what happens there is they cancel each other out. Okay, so all that's left there is an x, which is what we want. Now, the square root of 16, remember the square root means what number times itself gives us that number. Well, 4 times 4 is 16, so we know the square root of 16 is 4. Now, something new that happens when we're solving equations or expressions with an exponent of 2 or with a quadratic here, what's going to happen is when we take the square root of a positive number, we're going to get 2 answers. Okay, and what we're going to get is we're going to get a positive 4 and we're going to get a negative 4. We're going to get 2 answers. Okay, so a lot of times how you see us write it is it's going to be not just positive 4, but what we're going to do is we're going to put plus and minus 4. That means it could be positive 4, it could be negative 4. Here's why that happens. If we have x squared equals 16, like the original problem was, if we're trying to, really what we're trying to find is what number squared gives us a positive 16. Well, positive 4 squared is 16, but also negative 4 times itself, right? That's what squared means. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16 as well. So really both answers work there. Okay? Now, if we look at this middle equation here, x squared equals 0, we're trying to figure out what number times itself equals 0. Well, this isn't going to be 2 answers, right? Because the only thing that's going to work there is 0, right? Because 0 times 0 is 0, right? No other number times itself is going to give us 0. So if we were to solve this one, we're not going to get 2 answers, right? And we square root it because that cancels our squared out. So we get x equals the square root of 0 is just 0. Not negative, right? Just x equals 0. So 1 answer there. Now the last one, this is important here. This is going to come up quite a bit moving forward. If we have an exponent here and we want to square root it, right, because we want to get rid of that squared to get x by itself, cancel them out, the square root of negative 9, okay, that means what times itself is negative 9? Well, think about that. 3 times 3 is positive 9. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. We can't get to a negative 9 by multiplying the same number, right, by itself. So that's going to actually give us no solution. Okay, we cannot take the square root of a negative number, right? It just can't happen. Okay, so using that idea, let's do a couple examples here. Make sure you have a piece of paper out. You're writing these down with me. So when we get to the form, we're going to do just fine on that at the end of the week. Okay, so here's our first example. Let's say we have x squared equals 18. Okay, and remember, we just want to get x by itself. Positive number, so we know it's not going to be no solution. We're good here. Let's square root both sides, right, because we want to undo the squared. Those cancel each other out. So we just have x left on the left side. Now, the square root of 18, we don't know that, right? It's not a perfect square. So remember last week what we did. We're going to factor tree this 18. Okay, let's say we got 18. What times what's 18? Maybe we think of 2 and 9 right away. And then 9 can be broken up into 3 and 3. Okay, remember we're simplifying this radical. We're circling our prime numbers. We're writing them out under the square root. 2 times 3 times 3, and we circled pairs, right? And for every 2 we circle, for every partner we circle, 1 comes out front. So we have 3 radical 2 is going to be our simplified answer. Okay, don't leave it as radical 18. Make sure we simplify that radical there. Okay? Next one. Let's say we have, let's make it a little tougher here. Let's say we have 2x squared plus 5 equals 37. Okay, remember the goal is to get the x all by itself. There's a lot going on here. Before we can square root anything, before we can undo this squared, we need to isolate whatever is squared. Right now, it's just x squared. Okay, that's the only thing that's being squared. So we need to get that by itself, the x squared. So let's move the 5 first. Let's subtract 5 from both sides. Okay, just like we're solving a normal equation here. So those cancel each other out. 2x squared equals 32. We're getting closer. Still can't square root this yet because the x squared has this 2 out front. 2's attached. So we know since that's being multiplied, let's divide both sides by 2. So all we have left here is x squared because those 2's cancel each other out. X squared equals 16. Now we're good. Okay, x is by itself here. We want to undo the squared to get x all alone. So we want to square root the squared. That way those can cancel each other out. And then we have x left. Square root of 16. Now be careful. Remember, it's not just 4. It's going to be positive and negative 4 because negative 4 squared is 16, positive 4 squared is 16. This is when we get our 2 answers. Okay, sometimes you'll see it written like this. Sometimes you'll see it written as x equals 4 and x equals negative 4. I mean, both ways are acceptable. Same thing there. Okay, a couple more here. Let's say we've got negative 3x squared plus 4 equals 16. Okay, again, be writing these down with me so you have something to look back at. It's very similar to the last problem. We need to get x squared isolated. So let's move the 4 first, subtract 4. Okay, we have negative 3x squared equals 12. Now we're close. We need to get x squared by itself. Let's divide both sides by negative 3 since we were multiplying here. Those cancel. X squared equals negative 4. Okay, right away we should see something here. When we square root both sides, we're trying to square root a negative number. Remember what happens when we try to do that? No solution, right? Remember, no solution. We can't square root a negative number. Okay, so our whole answer, we can stop working there. And our little no solution sign there. Okay, or you can write it out. No solution. Okay, last one. Last one here. Let's say we've got 3x squared minus 2 equals 19. Okay, so write that down with me. Again, trying to get x squared isolated, so we need to move the 2 first. Let's add 2. Okay, that way those cancel out. We have 3x squared equals 21. Now, we need to divide by 3. So x squared, 21 divided by 3 is 7. We're close. Square root both sides because we need x all alone. The squared and the square root cancel each other out. We don't know the square root of 7, right? It's a decimal. We can try to factor tree it, but when we do that, we get 1 and 7, so we don't want to do that. Let's leave it as the square root of 7. But remember, if we square root a positive number, we have to have the plus and the minus in front. That's super important, guys. We have to have that plus and the minus out there because really we have 2 answers when we're taking the square root of a positive number.